There's a massive problem happening right now in B2B companies. Market teams are hitting their goals while sales teams can hit their numbers. Today, we're going to show you why. Hey, I'm Alex, and after working with over 100 B2B companies, I noticed something interesting. The fastest growing companies aren't necessarily the ones with biggest budgets and the best products. They're the ones that figure out how to stop leads from failing through the cracks between marketing and sales. I brought in someone special today, Michael Tucker from Rocky Mountain RevOps. Michael is the person companies call when their HubSpot is a mess and their sales team is ready to revolt. Michael, what is the biggest problem you're seeing right now?
Uh, the biggest problem I'm seeing right now is, simply put, the technologies that sales and marketing teams have relied on for decades at this point still just aren't being implemented correctly, and the fundamental understanding of the job that they should be performing just isn't known. So that leads to missteps, that leads to all the problems that you just described, and I think it's something that just has to be fixed for the monetization of all the efforts that these teams put in to really uncap that and unleash it.
In the next 30 minutes, we'll show you the exact frameworks we use to fix broken marketing and sales systems, where leads are getting stuck and how to get them moving again, and the 3 changes you can make this week to see immediate improvements. If you're tired of marketing and sales pointing fingers at each other while good leads disappear, stick around. This is going to be good.
Before we dive into fixing things, I just want to share an interesting thing that I see every time I'm on a call with a company, and I think that it's this propensity to want to spend money to solve a problem, and that's great for software companies that are providing solutions, but that's not really the crux of what is going to solve the root of most problems, and that's where architecture mapping comes in, and it's a concept that not everybody is familiar with. So if you want to think about solving that sales and marketing bridge, you have to think about it that team and the systems that they use from a blueprint sort of standpoint. I'm a sucker for a good analogy in the sense that you can't build a house unless you have a good blueprint, and you have that blueprint detail a solid foundation for those teams to then be structured upon. So I'm going to show you what a quick example of this looks like, and we'll talk through this a couple of times throughout the conversation here. This is a very simple architecture map, and it's something that simply delineates a linear progression of a sales and marketing operation. We have our buyer's journey up top, moving through the stages of unaware, need recognition, looking for information, all the way through to purchase decision. We're making sure to document the different marketing channels we have in play, and in terms of how they're starting to bring contacts into our different properties, namely a website, but they can circumvent that. So when you're thinking of organic, you're thinking of social media, you're thinking of any lead sourcing platforms. How are those coming into the system? Are they coming in through forms? And then what are the sales stages that they're going through? What happens in the new stage? What happens in the connecting stage? What happens in the qualifying stage? And then on into the closing side of things. Each of those stages should have an associated understanding of what is happening and the actions that are taking place in that stage from a universal standpoint. When you have a document like this is the kind of thing that you can put on a new hire's desk and say, this is exactly how our company works, if you're on the sales and marketing team. And in the same sense, it provides a universal playbook so everyone has a common understanding, especially from a data layer, of what we're looking at and what that then should tell us. When you have all of that documented and then well refined and well implemented, you have a recipe book to then understand where you can look to optimize various parts of this funnel as you go down the process. So, as I said, it's really powerful. Like, once you have this map, you can spot the revenue leaks that become problems, right? A simple example I'll use is re-engagement database marketing. That's one where you've already paid for a contact, they're in your system, they fell out of your sales journey at some point in time. That's something where a system like this helps you illuminate those hidden opportunities that you wouldn't normally see. So I think from there, Alex, we can go into a more of a real world example. I think you've got a company prepared for us, or at least a scenario that we can work through.
Yeah, I love the scenarios and we can put this to practice. So let me tell you about a fictional B2B SaaS companies. We call it Engage Pro. But this story might sound very familiar. So they're grown B2B SaaS company selling customer engagement software. From the outside, everything looks great. they're growing, hiring new people, running campaigns on multiple channels, but behind the scenes, it's a different story. Here are the 4 fires they need to put out. First, their lead data is a mess. They're running Google ads, LinkedIn campaigns, webinars, doing SEO, but none of it connects properly to their CRM. So the sales team is spending hours manually updating lead informations instead of actually selling. Second, they're leaking leads everywhere. Here's what I mean. Somebody downloads their free ebook, great, but then nothing happens. No follow-up emails, no nurture sequence. These leads just sit there getting cold. The third problem, classic marketing sales finger pointing. Marketing team is celebrating hitting their goals, but the sales team is pulling their hair out because the leads aren't qualified. So neither team has a clear pictures of who should they be targeting. And here's the kicker. They're trying to scale through all of this. New hires come in, all excited, but within weeks they're just frustrated because nobody can tell them how things are supposed to work. Everybody's doing their own thing, creating even more chaos. Michael, I know you see this all the time. What's usually the first thing you look at when you walk through in a situation like this?
Yeah, it's funny in the sense that it's not funny because this is not a unique scenario. This is extremely common. I see this pattern all over the place. Let me share a quick framework with how I used to untangle this mess. Think of your revenue engine like a factory assembly line. Every piece needs to connect smoothly from one to the next, or things start to back up or break. Those are exactly where you're talking about your leads falling out. So when we're looking at how these leads are coming in, we can take an example of like a Google ad versus, say, a content download. Those are the kinds of instances where there are different fundamental activities corresponding to a buyer's journey of what happens when those activities are undertaken. Someone who clicks on a Google ad is likely a little more down the funnel. Someone who is just reading an article or downloading a white paper, probably a little higher up. You want to make sure that as those sorts of activities funnel into the website and into a form where some amount of information is captured, that's then where you start to bifurcate that process to understand, okay, this person's going to get treated this way, this one's going to get treated another way. Someone who fills out a landing page for a Google ad, for example, those people warrant direct sales outreach. They've raised their hand, they're ready to talk to someone, they want to have that more advanced conversation. They're going to flow a little bit more directly into the process of selling in that sense. Whereas someone who reads a white paper, if you come at them from a sales angle very aggressively, that's way too aggressive. That's someone who's going to get either turned off, they're going to ignore you, they're going to be ignored. It wasn't the expectation that they were having when they wanted to interact with your organization in that exact fashion. So what you need to understand is then once this system is mapped in terms of how it flows, then you starting to define those rules of engagement accordingly. So, and that gives you the best comprehensive experience that your system and the people interacting with that system are possibly going to have. So most companies try to collect everything up front, and that's a mistake. So again, back to that analogy that's analogous to dating, you don't want to ask for everything on that first date, right? So I think, Alex, I know you've got some great insights on how to structure that information flow as it pertains to different stages of the buyer's journey, different types of marketing channels, and how that feeds into how then the system allocates and pushes people along into different avenues for them to be then appropriately responded to. Any thoughts there?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is exactly why mapping the buyer's journey is so crucial. Let me show how this works in practice. So every lead goes through 3 stages: awareness, consideration, and conversion. Where most of the companies mess up, they treat every lead the same way, regardless of where they're in the journey. That's exactly what you just mentioned. So let's look at what happened in Engage Pro in the awareness stage. They doing all the right things on paper: Google Ads, LinkedIn campaigns, organic social media, blog posts, but their traffic bounces right off the website. Why? Because they're skipping 3 crucial questions. One, when somebody lands on the website, we need to ask, are we targeting the right people? Two, does this message actually speak to the prospect's pain points? And three, most importantly, when somebody clicks through, does the landing page deliver what was promised? Now it gets interesting in consideration phase stage. If someone downloads the ebook, great, but then silence. This is like having somebody walk through into your store, show interest in your product, and then completely ignoring them. Here's what should happen instead. The moment somebody downloads that ebook, they should get a case study shows how somebody just like them solved their problem. A few days later, if they actually open that case study, somebody should invite them to a demo, SDR or EE. And if come back to the website, we use smart chatbots to keep the conversation going and engaging. But here's where it all comes together, the conversion stage. This is when interested prospects become customers. But right now, engaged pro sales team is working in the dark. They're talking to the leads without knowing anything about them. The fix is actually pretty simple. When somebody shows up, they're ready to buy, like requesting pricing or submitting a demo form, two things should happen automatically. The right salesperson get alerted right away, and they get all the important information about this lead, company size, what content they're looking for, pain points, anything crucial to this, and what problems are they trying to solve. So, Michael, I know you have some specific ideas how to set up this in the real world. How do you typically approach this?
Yeah. So while I said on the front side, technology is not the solution to everything, technology is definitely a consideration as to the overarching journey that you're going through. And just as you aligned various channels to various buying points and the motions that follow suit from either sales or marketing, each of those has to be structured out in such a fashion when the company is ready to digest that. So, standard digital marketing channels, pretty easy out of the gate. Definitely recommend those as a first strategy to get out and get your presence known, things to that effect. When you can start layering on additional tools, you are adding that additional complexity. So, that understanding of the blueprint of your system and who's doing what at what point, that has to be understood to maximize those values of those sorts of tools. Tools like Sixth Sense or Zoom Info or Sales Navigator, very prospecting oriented tools. Those are the sorts of tools where they're going to inject a contact or an individual ahead of marketing's activities because they're being directly owned by sales from the get go. Those are the kinds of individuals where you want to have good defined life cycle stages and deal stages so you know what actual activities are happening on the sales front. From that systematic standpoint, you also want to have those disqualification mechanisms just the same to where if an individual who is circumvented marketing and is going straight to sales, if they get removed from that sales queue, well, marketing still wants to pick them up. By understanding that whole linear progression of that blueprint of mapping out the system, you can then start to overlay nurture campaigns, database re-engagement campaigns, things to that effect that can reactivate individuals as they've progressed past certain points in the process with a much more personalized message. You can take that step further when you're ready, and I emphasize ready as a very important word here, with other heavier tools like a Gong or any of those more like revenue automation or revenue optimization platforms that really start to nitpick and pick apart how the selling process is happening. So you have additional data coming into the system either to improve the sales motions. So making sure that your scripts are as locked down as possible, that you're asking for timing and budget and BANT and MEDPIC or whatever at the appropriate time. But all those things start to also formulate into data points that marketing can use from a segmentation standpoint. So when all of that stuff is lined out, you have a very firm understanding of how the process should work. So then you can almost look internally and say, okay, if all of this is working as well as it possibly can, we're identifying where people are falling out. We're catching those people with additional types of campaigns. We're treating the individuals and where they're coming from with the appropriate respect and the right level of touch and engagement. We can start to look at our ICP that much more critically, right? And what are the definitions we've associated to the stages and how those relate to the ICP to say, are we actually selling to the right person if we are still experiencing problems in conversion or not hitting sales numbers or lead generation's not doing what it's supposed to do? So you've essentially created this big feedback loop where you've got it looks linear on the front side of things, but everything that it tells you as it progresses through that system points back to an earlier stage to either educate that stage in a better sense or optimize that stage from a testing standpoint in a much better fashion. Now, when we try to take all these concepts and all these different tools, the processes from sales, the activities from marketing, all of those different aspects, I really find that tool, Lucid Chart, is the one I'm particularly a fan of. And that's that sort of baseline foundation to come back to this whole concept of architecture mapping, to where if you bring that map up and you turn that into a living document, you've got something you can continuously iterate and then disseminate across your organization as you have these continued learnings. This doesn't have to be a complicated process, nor should it be on the front side. You want to keep this simple so it's understood and it's sticky. Once you've got that in place, you're starting to build the muscle memory that allows you to take this whole activity forwards in a continuous cycle of optimization. Look at it every 6 months, look at it every year, something to that effect. So, Alex, I'll wrap all that up with what we've covered today and what companies can do right to get started. We've seen a clear system map and how that can transform a messy sales and marketing system, add a lot of clarity to really smooth out the revenue engine. But here's the thing, you don't have to fix everything at once, and trying to do so will cause more problems than anything else. Start with what's costing you the most money or the most headache on the front side. If the problem is, I don't know where my leads are coming from, well, you need to understand the sources that are driving leads and the mechanisms that are capturing that information. If your conversion rates from a sales side of things aren't what they need to be, and they're lopsided, it's not the hockey stick that you would hope to see from an escalating rate. Okay, well, then you need to know then that, is there a function of the sales process at a given point in time, because you've mapped it out, that's something we can go show some light on. If you're giving a bunch of demos to companies, but none of them are converting to customers, maybe there's something wrong with that process. For most companies, though, it means there's 3 generally simple steps. First, get your teams in a room together. Have marketing and show sales exactly where leads are coming from, and have sales show marketing what the perfect lead looks like. Super simple, but it's a hypercritical part of this entire stage. It creates that mutual understanding for both organizations, so there's no ambiguity between the two. You'd be amazed at how many problems this one conversation can solve, because it creates such a clear definition of that shake hands that you're looking for between those teams. Second, pick your biggest lead source. Usually it's going to be something related to spend or ad cost or something to that effect, maybe Google Ads, maybe LinkedIn. And you want to map out exactly what happens because of the investment going into it. You want to map that entire process for that one specific sort of lead all the way through, from marketing to sales to nurture to closing, and where they're getting stuck. Where are they finding that people are falling off? That's where you're going to figure out the softer side of that system that's less maybe so stated in data, maybe more so in personal process. If you fix that one, things will start to flow together much more quickly and much more smoothly. And that then becomes something you can scale and copy that same workflow into your other channels to solidify everything else. The third is to set up basic tracking. You don't need fancy tools. Most of your standard ad platforms or whatever technology you're using will cover that, but you want to make sure that even a simple spreadsheet can see where leads are coming from, so that you can tell where they're getting lost. That tracking and understanding of true source really then at the end of all of this allows you to say, these are the channels that work for me. I'm going to go put more money into these channels. I'm going to take money out of those that aren't working. And that'll solve the 80-20 really fast. You've got all of eternity to go figure out that other 20%. So take it in bite-sized chunks, make it systematic, make it repeatable, make it simple so it can be understood and disseminated.
If you're watching this and recognize some of these problems in your own company, drop a comment below with the biggest marketing sales alignment challenges you have. And or if you want to see how we would map out a specific situation, the link to book calls in description. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.